Welcome to Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Tom, W89TDD.
And I'm Quinn, K8QS. What are we talking about, Tom?
Well, Quinn, today we're going to talk about a question that's on everybody's mind. How much does it cost to get into ham radio? And getting started in ham radio in 2026 is surprisingly affordable if you can start small. Okay? You can be fully licensed and on the air for under $30. Though most hobbyists eventually will spend between $100 and $550 for a more capable first station and equipment, and costs relate considerably to HF or UHF, VHF operation.
Yeah, let's say one thing about that, Tom. So HF would be, over the airways, longer distance stuff, like between 80 meters and 10 meters, let's say, and like the broadcast stations on the AM radios at night. And then UHF and VHF, we're talking about higher frequencies, smaller rigs, and not distance unless you go through the internet or something with it as well, which we're not going to get into now. So
or repeaters. Yeah.
Right. So in Michigan, for example, here we have a repeater system that covers most of the state. You can get on one frequency, and you're on all over if you want.
Right.
Now, of course, that's a problem because you can't have too many people talking at once.
So here's a breakdown. Let's do a breakdown of the typical costs.
Okay, let's do licensing and education, though, first, Tom.
Okay, that's a cost.
That's a cost, yeah. And often when people talk about, what does it cost to get into ham radio, they talk just about the equipment. We'll talk about that. But so you want to get what we call a technician license. That's the sort of beginner license. And the FCC application fee is about $35.
Yeah, $35.
Right? And that's for a 10-year license. Then you have an exam session fee, which are local examiners, local hams will give you the test. That's $15. It's pretty standard, although I think it varies a little bit depending on the examining group. And I think there are some clubs that actually cover the cost.
Right.
So you don't have to pay anything for that. You probably want to get some study materials. We used to really have to get study materials and really study them because we didn't have the questions. Now the questions are made available to people, so you can study those questions and take a little class or something. But it's good to have either online or in person a way of learning what some of the stuff means so you don't just memorize answers. And so there are some sites online like hamstudy.org or hamexam.org, and there are paid apps and, of course, physical books that you can buy from the ARRL and others. But let's just say study material, you're going to get it because you want to learn it. You want to not just memorize answers to the questions. And so you're going to get it, and that's going to cost you, let's say, between $20 and $30 or so. So total licensing, Tom, what does that lead us to approximately?
Well, that cost-wise, it could be up to $85 depending on if you're going through getting all the books and you're going through a paid application on the internet to learn this stuff. But still, the two organizations you mentioned, hamstudy.org and hamexam.org, are both, I believe, free. And so you can save yourself some bucks on that. Equipment-wise, most beginners start with an HT, a handheld transceiver, like a 2-meter VHF, UHF rig. You can get them fairly cheap.
In fact, some clubs now are giving them, because they're so inexpensive, to people when they pass the license exam.
Right. That's included, and actually it's in the testing fee. They'll build that in, and you walk away with a $25-$30 HT as soon as you pass your test. So that's a big plus.
Yeah, and if they're good about it, they will have pre-programmed it for the local repeater. So you can get right on. You can walk out there, and turn it on and start talking.
That's part of the learning process. Here in Florida, we have a statewide 2 meter um, coverage, and by the time you program in all the repeaters and all the offsets and all the tones and everything, that's a real learning experience to get with your HT.
Yeah, just to be clear what a repeater is too. So you've got this little handy talkie, like an old walkie-talkie,
Right.
and it's small. It's maybe small if it can fit in your pocket, like a pack of cigarettes or something. And it's low. There you go. It's low power, but we build these what are called repeaters on tops of buildings or on tops of mountains or on tops of towers, and so your weak little signal gets to that. And then that repeater takes your signal and retransmits it at a much higher power, or at least a much higher antenna for really good line of sight coverage. And it can be linked to other repeaters.
Right.
So suddenly you've got your little handy talkie here, which cost you $15 or it was given to you, and you're talking across a state.
Right.
And you can go on from there. So it's not expensive to get started in VHF, UHF.
No, that would be the ultra budget approach for $25, $35, $40, something like a Bofang UV5R is that's a classic gateway radio, and as I just showed, they're getting even smaller, and it has the basic functions you need for hitting not only local repeaters, but within a couple mile range or so, you could work a simplex with any other ham that happens to be, on the frequency.
Yeah, simplex means on the same frequency. The repeaters, right. It goes in on one frequency and comes out on another. So right. That's the ultra budget way. What if you went further than that? What would it cost you for UHF? VHF?
Well, then you've got a reputable starter kit, which would be anywhere between $70 and $110. You'd have something like a Yaesu FT 4XR or an F265R that offers it's more durability. It's better built, probably a lot heavier anyway, and has much clearer audio, both on the transmit and the receive side. And to go from there, you can upgrade. You can replace the stock rubber ducky antenna with something better, like a Nagoya NA771. But you got to watch out on it because there's a lot of counterfeits out there. Make sure it's a Nagoya. And that's
Tom, the best show your rubber ducky there again, so people can see what a rubber ducky is.
Here's my standard come with it rubber ducky. Not much to it there. It's
no, but as soon as you start getting a good quality antenna that's longer than that and tuned to frequency, your distance increases.
Yeah, they're right. They're about about 14 inches long, so they're much more efficient. The other thing is, that'd be about the best $20 or so you can spend to upgrade your HT. The other possibility, which further expands your ham experience, is to go DMR. And DMR gets rather complicated, but it's basically an HT that goes through a repeater that's connected to the internet, that goes through, I thought there's about 1,500 international channels, probably more, that allows you to work essentially worldwide on your HT. You still need a license in order to access it, even though it has some internet connection to it. And a lot of hams will say, well, that's not ham radio, but ham radio is communicating.
Yep.
And if it allows you to communicate, DMR channels is the way to go if you want to have that worldwide communications experience without having a big expenditure.
Yeah, and let me add to that too, that you can do some of this just on a computer.
Right.
There are apps you can use on a computer to connect to these networks that are out there that are part of DMR. And so you wouldn't even have to have an HT to get in that way. You can get in through an app on your phone or on a computer. And what I like about this, especially, Tom, is for people who really are in difficult situations with HF antennas, bigger
Right.
antennas, and so, but they want to be able to connect with people who live in other parts of the U.S. and Canada, Mexico, whatever, and so suddenly they can get on this way inexpensively with an HT or through their computer, whatever, and
Or
groups.
you can even use your cell phone. There's an application called Peanut that's both accessible from your PC, your laptop, or computer, or on your cell phone.
Right. And you and I, of course, have played around with that quite a bit, and it's great fun. Peanut, it's called. Look for that app called Peanut. So let's get into the HF, the high frequency area. Again, that's from about 80 meters, let's say, up to about 10 meters. That's considered high frequency for us as hams, where we have privileges. We have other privileges too, but we won't get into that now. So this gets a little pricier, but not necessarily much more. A mobile or base station, hey, you can get into it. A used one, and on the top end, a new one for between $150 and $400. Okay, and these are 100-watt rigs, which is pretty standard. You can use it in your car. It requires 12 volts from your car, or you can use it on a desk or wherever you want to put it. So you're going to have that. You have to get a power supply for it too. Now you can go a step up and get higher quality rigs, for let's say 600 to 1200. And then there are these really popular forever radios. They're going to be around forever. People will fix them up because they're sort of classics, like this ICOM 7300 that was selling new, I think, originally for about $1,200. Then it went down to about $1,000. And if you can find them now new, I think they sell for just under $1,000. Used, you'll find one about $750. And this is really a rig that will do anything you would need an HF rig to do, including an antenna tuner and so forth. That's the ICOM IC-7300. And some of the ham clubs will loan out rigs in one of these categories, a less expensive or a little more expensive, to new hams as well. But of course, there's some other costs involved here hidden. I mentioned the power supply. You have to have a power supply to run an HF rig to give you 12 volts. And that'll cost you maybe $100 somewhere around there. You need some coaxial cable to go from your rig out to your antenna, and then you need an antenna. We just did a video on end-fed antennas that you can do pretty inexpensively, but there are a lot of inexpensive HF antennas out there. You can make your own, what's called a dipole. The coax comes into the middle, and then you got wire on either side, and the total length is right for a particular band, and you can get that running pretty quickly. So let's say antenna anywhere from maybe $20 to $150 typically, but you can start to spend more when you get into the manufactured things like a really good vertical antenna. You can spend $300-400 easily, $600. That's nice for a lot of people because they have a relatively small footprint. So, Tom, see if you can summarize what this looks like cost-wise then to get into ham radio.
Well, thinking back, when I was just talking to you about my original novice station.
Yeah.
This was talking 1964. I bought a used Heathkit DX40 transmitter, crystal controlled, 75 watt, no flexibility. It was used. I paid $40 for it. I also had I bought a Helicrafters SX88. I paid $80 for that. And then another $15 for, the SWR bridge and some coax. So for about $150 in 1964, it cost me to assemble a very simple, modest station. In today's dollars, that would have been like $900. So
it's interesting, Tom. We have to do a video on this, on our early days in ham radio and the kinds of equipment we had and why. I built my first transmitter. I think it was an article in CQ magazine, if I believe, and it was called something like the Peanut Whistle.
Yeah.
And it had just maybe 3 vacuum tubes and hardly anything to it. It was very low power, maybe 10 watts. And I got some capacitors and resistors and so on to make it. And it didn't cost me much at all. And then I bought a receiver. I think it was a Helicrafter's S85 for less than $100. Probably, yeah, I definitely less than $100. So that's how I got started. But today, if you want to build your own equipment inexpensively and low power is okay for you for HF, there are kits out there that you can buy from companies to put together low power transmitters, receivers, and transceivers that'll both transmit and receive. And so and I haven't looked lately at what some of those cost, but I think they're, for a transceiver, it's in the $300 to $400 range for a kit. Okay, so put it all together, Tom. What's it look like? All
right. Well, just to summarize it, and this isn't counting any freebies you might got from, ham clubs or neighbor hams that just want to get rid of stuff. For the bare minimum, $80 to $100, cheap. A solid starter, $150 to $200, and at the all-in, about $1,200, and that would be inclusive of the radio, power supply, antenna, coax, yada yada yada, all the other incidentals and accessories that you're going to need.
And then there you could have an HF transceiver for HF bands, plus an inexpensive handy talkie for UHF, VHF. So that's about $1,200 or so is how we kind of priced it. Yeah. Is this expensive for a hobby? Well, let me just say this. I've mentioned this before, but I have an oldest brother who's really into golf. And boy, does he spend a lot at his country club to be able to play golf. And the other day, he was driving from where he lives in Minneapolis for 3 months out in Arizona. In Southern California, to where they live, where it's nice and warm and sunny there. And he said they're going through, I think it was Tucson, he told me. And I said, okay, I like Tucson. He said, well, we're going through there because there's a place there that will tune your golf clubs for you. Mm-hmm. I said, what? Mm-hmm. He said, that's right. Your golf clubs get out of tune. And I don't know if he was BSing me or not, but he said both he and his wife will get all of their clubs tuned there. And he said, well, it's only about $1,500 to get your golf clubs tuned every year. He had to be BSing me. But if you know better, add a note down below, because I'm thinking any hobby you get into these days, if you're not careful, if it kind of takes you over and you become addicted to that hobby, whatever it is, it can be a lot more expensive than what it is to get started in ham radio. So ham radio, what does it cost to get started in ham radio? We've given you an overview of it. This is Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
I'm Tom, WA9TDD.
Thanks, everybody. Give us some comments, suggestions. We look forward to producing more great videos for you. 7-3.